New intro song. A little rough, but we got some work to do. Back at it. The Ray and Adam show after a brief hiatus. So pumped about today's show, you guys. We have Luke, Frank. First off, thanks for coming on, guys. This is fantastic. Razor, you got a little intro for us, little promo for the show. Why don't you start with that, and then we'll jump right in with the guys.
Yeah. So if you're not watching live right now, you came through Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Music. Just so you know, next week you can watch live. So initially this was just open to the members of inplayLIVE, and now it's open to the public. So you can watch with hundreds of other guys from inplayLIVE who have made hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you join, you'll see how. So there's a question for those of you on today. There's a question box. We might even answer them, but feel free to
maybe
to put your questions in there instead of the chat. We'll have a way better time sifting through them and getting to them that way. And if you want to join us betting, go to inplayLIVE and punch in Ray and Adam as your promo code. You'll save some money.
Yeah. So, and actually, if you want a real easy way to find that, if you go to our Twitter page, it's Ray and Adam Show, or at Ray and Adam Show on Twitter. We'll post it in the link here. The pinned tweet shows you exactly how to register. You're going to save yourself $50 a quarter on your fees, and it's a great way to get started. So with that said, first ever fantasy football special. Ray and I have been playing fantasy football since Luke and Frank were in diapers, by the looks of things.
For sure.
We've been, for sure we have. And I wouldn't call fantasy football our first love, but I would call it our second love in terms of making money on sports. Prior to having you two guys on, I'd say that Ray is probably the best fantasy football player I know. But I'm sure he's going to learn a thing or two from you guys today. So this is great. Before we get, go ahead, Ray.
Well, I was going to say, I used to think that the money I made on fantasy football was awesome until I came across inplayLIVE, where like, it's completely changed my perspective on things, but it's still like, it still makes Sundays so much fun. So I'm really happy we got a couple of pros like you guys on today.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to talk about a little later, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we kind of marry what we do in fantasy football and what we do at inplayLIVE in a way that allows you to not just dominate your fantasy leagues, but also allows you to make some pretty good money while the games are happening. So one kind of feeds into the other, which is just fantastic. So Luke, let's hear your story. Where are you from? Where are you at? How you get started? Let's hear it.
Hey, everybody. My name is Luke Sawhook. I am a 21-year-old fantasy football analyst. I've been playing fantasy for about 7 years now, which in the grand scheme of things feels very small. But this is my, I would say, like second and a half season as a fantasy analyst. I would say second full, really all in fantasy analyst season. I am currently a senior at Miami University of Ohio. The way I got my start in the fantasy industry was I am currently the president of the fantasy football club we have here on campus. I was elected president as a freshman here. And then over the summer of 2020, like a lot of people, I made a Twitter account for the club and started making some polls and making some fantasy content and whatnot. And I got the attention of a guy named Eric from the Dynasty Nerds. He's one of their writers, and I hit them up asking if they were looking for an intern to do their social media, because that's what I go to school for, social media marketing. And I got a position with them there. And then from that point on, that kind of propelled my personal Twitter into the fantasy world. And then over the last 2 years, I've built up an audience of almost 15,000 followers, creating my own fantasy football content, rankings, doing shows, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but a really fun one, and one that is changed my life for sure. It's been a great time. And shout out to the Fantasy Footballers podcast for becoming the source of my intense passion for fantasy football like 3 years ago.
That's awesome. And Luke, when you're not focused on fantasy football, you are you're doing some pretty cool things with some local teams in your area. Why don't you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah, over the summer, I took an internship with the Hudson Valley Renegades, which is the high A minor league baseball affiliate for the New York Yankees. I was out there in New York all summer running the team's social media there, tweeting out highlights, doing all that kind of stuff on field for batting practice. It was a lot of fun with one of their top prospects, Jason Dominguez. That was super cool to see up close. And then this fall, I'm at Miami University of Ohio, like I said again, and I'm doing social media for their football team this year. So if you guys like Maction, keep an eye out for that. So appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Love it. And we do love Maction. We do love
absolutely
Maction studies. Yeah, for sure. When you were saying that you're interning for the high A ball club, I was just having a flashback to season 1 of Brockmire. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but they assigned some young college kid to look after him. If you guys haven't seen Brockmire, it's as funny a show as you're ever going to see. And it's about an absolute lush who's one of the top baseball announcers in anywhere. It's great.
We're going to try and get Brockmire on next week.
That would be great. Actually,
we're working on it. Just thought of it. So
you haven't reached out yet?
I'm not sure if he'll come, but he would be a hell of a guest.
Oh my God. I would watch that. I would pay to watch that show. You could put that on pay-per-view. I would watch. Easy. Yeah.
Bring your own bourbon.
Yeah. Bring your own bourbon.
What's going on, guys?
Frank, let's hear your story.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's my pleasure. My story, I've been playing fantasy football probably about like 17 years. I'm probably older than you think, because you said since I was in diapers that. But yeah. So then the way I started, I just started a Twitter account, firing off my takes. I have a lot of opinions. Started because it was around in April. We got into fantasy baseball content, caught on with a up and coming site. From there, added in fantasy football content, which is now my focus. Worked with Rotoballer a bit. They focus on fantasy content. I've since moved to the game day where I work full time. I'm a content creator for fantasy and betting, and also do some evergreen pieces, which are like instructional with betting related, like teaching, beginners how to the intricacies of betting, like different wager types, things like that. Awesome. Also write sports book reviews and online casino reviews for the game day. So just the added portion to my fantasy football content. But really working on, branching out into video, joining as a podcast guest, and continuing, on maintaining an active Twitter where I got like around 12,000 followers now, always interacting with my followers, debating fantasy and, helping them with their leagues. So again, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, that's excited. Awesome. What a story. I love I love guys who just let passion drive the bus. I can tell you guys are super passionate about what you do, and it's just awesome. So guys, before we get into some specific player questions, I mean, everybody's got different philosophies on how to take on fantasy. At inplayLIVE, we are big fans of value. And of course, value is getting, in the betting world, value is all about getting better odds than you should for the risk that you're taking. Right. And when you're drafting your fantasy team, that's also critical, right? You have to be willing to sometimes step out of what is obvious in order to do that. And I've been following you guys on Twitter for a while, and I know that you guys are really keen on value. Let's have a conversation about that. Frank, why don't we start with you? What are some of your philosophies when it comes to fantasy football and how to get value when you're drafting your team?
Well, what you should really do is map out your draft and think about, which players you like, and that could kind of sway your decision-making if you're caught between two players. I'll give you an example. So let's say you're picking at the end of the first round and, you like Travis Kelce as a player, but you really like Kyle Pitts and, he has a chance to get to you in the third round. So if you're debating, say, with, Travis Kelce, and you also like CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver, you might think, okay, I'm going to take Lamb here because I know I have a good chance to get Pitts, who I really like in the third. Right. So that's just, you're making a bet where the cost, like you mentioned, is lower in that instance, where you're using a third rounder on a high upside tight end as opposed to a late first. So that would be one way to approach it throughout the entire draft. And, thinking about late round targets who you're really focusing on later on. And you're looking at average draft position as a baseline. So let's say you like Rashad White and you're seeing in average drafts, maybe 9th round. This is just me spitballing it, not the exact. And it varies on your platform.
Yeah.
So you know that he's going in the 9th. You really like him. You might have to jump that ADP a little bit and take him in the 8th. It's just about really ensuring that you have a plan in place within your draft and thinking about who you like. And like I wanted to just say one more thing is knowing your platform, because the rankings are different on each site. Like Yahoo, like I really like Marquise Brown, and if I draft him on NFFC, which is a high stakes platform, you'd have to take him in the 4th round there. But on Yahoo, he goes like in the 7th round.
Wow.
So in knowing that he's ranked there, you're going to know that your league mates aren't going to see, because let's face it, a lot of them are looking at the list on their draft screen. Yeah. They're going to forget sometimes. So you might not have to take Marquise Brown on Yahoo in the 4th round. You might, you could wait till the 6th, maybe not risk it till the 7th, but so that's just an example of thinking about the platform you're on and acting accordingly.
I love that you brought that up. We're going to come back to that in a little bit because we're going to talk about our favorite platforms. Luke, rather than asking the exact same question to Frank, one of the oldest questions, I know, it's funny to ask the oldest question to the youngest guy on the call, but how do you place your weighting between upside potential and assurance of the floor, right? Like the guy who is going to get you X, like the old example was like Emmitt Smith is a lock to get 1,000 yards a year, even when he was past his prime, right? So how do you prioritize, shoot for the fence or shoot for the moon, swing for the fences, or, just take your easy singles and doubles?
It's a great question. And it really depends, player to player, situation to situation. I'll start by saying upside is really important to me. I think upside is what ultimately wins you your fantasy football leagues, especially in the later rounds. Earlier on in your draft, you should be looking for a blend of players who are obviously really good and who have high upside, but the floor is always important. But the thing is, for me, it always depends on like the tier of guy you're looking for, right? Like in the 1st round, you're looking for guys who can be like the overall RB1 or the wide receiver 1 and whatnot. And the thing that's interesting is between risk and the floor and management and stuff. It's like Christian McCaffrey is my first pick this year. A lot of people disagree with that, but I can explain why pretty easily. It's because his ceiling compared to Jonathan Taylor's ceiling is just way higher. Last season, Jonathan Taylor had one of the weakest RB1 seasons of the last decade. He's still fantastic. Listen, he's my RB2 clear cut. He's fantastic. But Christian McCaffrey in 2019 put up 29 fantasy points per game. That production's unheard of. That's like the best RB1 season in recent history. Yeah. And if you took away every single touchdown he scored in 2019, he still scored more points per game than Jonathan Taylor last year. That's how good Christian McCaffrey can be when he's healthy. Wow. So for me, the risk there, while it is substantial over Jonathan Taylor, his value at his ceiling is way higher than Jonathan Taylor's. So for me, if Christian McCaffrey hits his ceiling, he outscores Jonathan Taylor by like 4 points per game, which is a substantial tier. Like that puts him in a tier of his own when he's healthy and playing well. So that's one thing. But besides McCaffrey, the whole value risk thing there is like in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, a lot of the times the players you're drafting there are already fantastic. They all have really high ceilings. So you tend to want to be a little bit more risk averse. What I'm trying to say is, the value tier ceilings matter. So if you can get a guy whose ceiling could be way higher than the guy you're picking between, I would go with the guy whose ceiling's higher unless he's like way too risky. But in the middle rounds, in the later rounds, upside is everything. Like once you have like your starting lineup and you're just getting down to like your bench spots or like your last flex, every single player, you should not even be worried about what their floor is, like what the baseline of production they can give you. You should only be worried about the maximum they can give you, because most of the time you're going to end up cutting half your bench anyway for roster spots off the waiver wire. So what you're looking for are players that can actually make a big impact on your team. Like, for example, you should never draft Tyler Boyd in fantasy. You shouldn't. Like a player like Tyler Boyd in later rounds, you know what he is. Like at best, he like absolute best case scenario is like the wide receiver 29. That's not going to win you your fantasy league. You know, he's going to be a guy who can throw in the flex and you'll be like, feel okay about it, you know, on a week, like a bye week or something. You're never going to want to put Tyler Boyd in your flex. You should be drafting guys like George Pickens and all these rookies later who have more upside and could do better things and could win you your fantasy league instead of drafting a guy who has a high floor because he's safe. Drafting safe players late is a horrible strategy. You should be drafting guys who have high ceilings. Someone just said in chat,
Agreed.
Tony, like he's a good high ceiling guy. Absolutely. And what you want to do is you also want to target guys who you'll know after week 1 or week 2 if they're good or if they're bad. So you can cut them and move on and be aggressive on waivers and get the guys off the waiver wire who can win you your leagues. Like things like Cordell Patterson last year, for example. Guys like that are out there every season. So, you know, getting the late round guys who can actually make an impact for your team and start happily are the guys you want to target over safe players for sure.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. Ray, you got a few questions for the boys? I've got a bunch more, but I know you've got some queued up. Why don't we let you do a few here?
Well, just to add, I was going to jump in earlier when you were talking about Christian McCaffrey, where like with a guy like him, he scares me because he's injury prone.
Yep.
I know he's great when he's in, but his handcuff historically has not been a plug and play like a Madison for a Dalvin Cook scenario where they just ride that top guy, right? Like that's the offense you want, where they're just going to ride him. And then like who is Christian McCaffrey's handcuff?
It's Deonta Foreman.
And do you think that he is going to be that plug and play, or do you think it goes to
I think he's the plug. I mean, I think he's the plug and play. I mean, obviously he won't be Christian McCaffrey levels of work, but he looked really good for Derrick Henry when he was out last year.
True.
I think he's a solid backup for sure. But I also would recommend though, even if you do draft a Christian McCaffrey, I don't think you should be drafting your handcuff unless it's like a high stakes league or something.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't recommend it to maximize on that upside. You should be drafting your opponent's handcuffs instead, because that gives you better upside.
Makes sense, except for like if I get Dalvin Cook, I am 100% going to have Madison on my team.
I don't think you should.
Really?
It's a roster clogger because
you're
never going to,
because Dalvin will get injured for sure.
Right. But you can find replaceable production off the waiver wire or something that week anyway. You don't have to have the handcuff. I think that you're getting more upside drafting like a rookie wide receiver or someone else's handcuff maybe in that spot instead, because it raises your team's overall ceiling. Because let's say you get, Deonta Foreman and McCaffrey goes down and you have Dalvin Cook, then you have, the starting running back there for Carolina. So you have like 3 starting running backs instead of 2, for example. And you'll always have 2 because you'll never be playing Alexander Madison and Cook. So you're essentially just like exiting out one roster spot for safety. And I don't think that's optimized for ceiling.
The chat is just screaming, Luke.
I'm trying, man.
Frank, do you agree with that philosophy?
Well,
it's okay to disagree.
I see what both sides are saying. For one, Alexander Madison's unique in the fact that the way he's been used when Dalvin Cook has missed time is he's just been fed and he's excelled in that role. He's been like an RB1 when he's had those opportunities. But we have to also consider like a lot of conventional fantasy football leagues, you're having like 5 to 6 bench spots. Like my home league with my buddies, we got only like 5 bench spots. So when you're using one on the handcuff there, it really is it's a clogger, as Luke says. Yeah. But if you're in a league where there's more bench spots, I understand that.
I agree.
Like the logic with Madison.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing also is that, there's a new coaching staff there with Kevin O'Connell. We can't assume that they'll say Dalvin Cook misses time, that they'll use Madison in the same way that, Coach Zimmer did back when he was there. That could be an added risk with it.
Perfect segue. So why don't we talk about, can you guys hear that plane going overhead there?
No, you're sounding good.
Okay, good. Why don't we talk about new situations with teams? Who's added that, key OC, head coach, offensive line, whatever it may be, where we're going to see production. It might not be easily to see from the naked eye, but where are you guys going with that?
I have one that's negative. Real quick, Frank. For me, I think this one could be bad for the Raiders backfield. It's going to be Josh McDaniels coming over from New England, notorious committee backfield guy, right? They just let Kenyon Drake walk. They have a receiving back guy in Amir Abdullah. They have Zamir White, who goes another between the tackles runner, and you have Josh Jacobs. And if you watch the Raiders play preseason so far this year, I think it's going to be a committee. And there's been some reports out there that have been agreeing with that sentiment. I think that Jacobs will clearly be the 1A, but I think you could be looking at kind of a Damian Harris situation in New England last year for Josh Jacobs.
Totally agree.
I like it. Thank you. What about the other way?
All right. Oh, you want to go, Luke? Say a positive one?
Yeah, I'll go real quick and I'll toss it to you, Frank. I think the Miami Dolphins with why am I blanking on his name? Oh God, their new head coach from Mike McDaniel. Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
From the 49ers. He was the offensive coordinator there. I think that he's going to do a lot of good things with that offense. Great weapons there in town. I'm dipping like a couple, I'm like my feet are in the pool on Tua, but I'm not like all the way like cannonballing in the deep end. Like I like Tua this year, but I'm still kind of cautious. But those weapons are amazing. I mean, if you suck with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Mike Gesicki, like I don't know what the problem is there. But also I think Chase Edmunds could be sneaky good value too. It's going to be a San Francisco style committee backfield there. Someone's going to have good value. Chase Edmunds is the lean back if you follow the money, and just talent wise, in my opinion, with washed up Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel. Other guys are in town there, but I think the Miami Dolphins offense is going to be looking really good this year in terms of fantasy value.
That might be a team where you just want to snag one of those running backs up in the draft late and then see if one of them just emerges in that first week or two. Hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You guys all have way more faith in Tua than I do. I think he's really, really shitty at everything as a diehard Bills fan.
That's fair, Adam. I just want to add just real quick. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is obviously dog shit, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the 49ers offense has still been good for fantasy with him there, and it's the same offensive coordinator. So, I mean, they don't really need world-breaking quarterback production, you know? Tua will be able to dink and duck the ball down the field like Jimmy G was able to at worst. So, I like it.
You guys mentioned Minnesota and the coaching change there. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's a really great interview with Justin Jefferson about he was talking about how he could never understand how Cooper Kupp could be so open all the time. Because he's like, we're watching, everybody knows that they're throwing to Kupp, everybody knows, and there's nobody within 10 yards of him. Like, how does that happen? And he goes, I started to see it with the scheme. He goes, we were running plays in practice where we would tell the D, the ball's coming to me. We'd tell him. And they would run a play and he'd be 10 yards open. Like they schemed him open. I know, I can't remember which one of you said it, but are one of you considering Jefferson as your number one overall pick? Did I read that right?
Yeah, that's me.
No.
That's me. I am. I love McCaffrey too for the reasons that Luke listed. It starts with what you said about the upgrade in scheme. You know, Kevin O'Connell coming from the Rams. Yeah. They're going to use Jefferson all over the field. They're going, get him those layup targets. Like they're going to scheme him open, just like they did with Cooper Kupp. And we look at last year before the Chargers game, the Vikings coaching staff made a point of emphasis to feature Justin Jefferson. If you look at his target share from that point on, it was like 30% or great. It was over 30%, which is like close to, Cooper Kupp type of volume. Yeah. And, it's more of a progressive play calling. It's more of a progressive play caller after Jefferson was dealing with more of like a traditional outdated type with Mike Zimmer and them. So I really think Justin Jefferson can take off this season and put up like over 20 points per game, maybe even higher, 22. I get what Luke is saying. I'm weighing some risk with McCaffrey missing all that time the last 2 years, and receiver being a position where, injuries happen at a much lower rate than with running backs. It's not as risky, but I still think Jefferson has similar, in a perfect world where McCaffrey's playing, I agree Jefferson doesn't have that same upside, but I'm weighing in some security there in ranking Jefferson as one, because I think he's the clear wide receiver one. Yeah. But I will agree with Luke that McCaffrey's RB1.
Yeah. Frank, I have a question for you actually too. So I also have Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver one this year. I had Kupp over him until the news about Stafford's elbow came out, and that they were basically tied for me, so I just switched them. I don't mind Jefferson as the number one overall pick in one certain format. It's if you're starting three wide receivers in your starting lineup, which gives an edge to wide receivers over running backs, And if it's a full point PPR, then I would feel comfortable going Jefferson 101. But in a 2 wide receiver PPR, I think I still need McCaffrey, but I don't hate it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't really argue it on. It's just a personal preference here because I do like the second round running back. Well, early on, you could have got Saquon Barkley like in the second round. So then imagine you were able to get Jefferson and Barkley. Barkley's ADP has since skyrocketed. He's close to a first rounder.
Right.
So, but when you take Jefferson and you could take like, maybe Leonard Fournette falls to you, and I like his upside. And I know Rashad White is appealing, but I still think Fournette has a secure role and he's got a lot of, receiving upside.
Tom Brady wants him on the field, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, so that it's just about roster construction there, because I'm not too high on, say, like Deebo Samuel, because I want to get a second round receiver when I'm drafting. So it's also about roster construction preferences there.
I will agree with Frank. I think this is what Frank was trying to say, kind of. I definitely like my team builds a lot when I draft wide receivers in the first round this year. Like if you start off with a Jefferson, a Cup, a Jamar, a Diggs, a Adams, whatever, I really like the value of running backs in the second through fourth round this year. Starting off with, let's say, Justin Jefferson and then getting an Aaron Jones or Leonard Fournette, and then going back in the third, maybe grabbing a running back there or a wide receiver, and then coming back in the fourth round. I love Breece Hall this year. I'm a big Breece Hall guy.
Yeah.
I think Breece Hall in the fourth round is an amazing value, and I've been drafting him a lot as my RB2.
Yeah. Guys, we're starting to segue into kind of that breakout potential. So, you mentioned running backs. I love AJ Dillon as a breakout guy. I think there's a pretty real chance that this is Aaron Jones's last year in Green Bay. I think that contract's going to be pretty tough to swallow moving forward. And I think AJ has like not quite King Henry potential, but really, really high. And people forget about AJ, what a great receiver he is. They think he can't catch because he's so big, but he's a great receiver. He has really, really solid receiving stats. So talk about your favorite breakout for a running back this year.
For me, it's Breece Hall. I'll keep it brief because I just mentioned him. He's going as like consensus like RB19 right now. I think that's really low for a rookie with his talent, and he's clearly the starter there in New York. Michael Carter does exist, but he's the 1B. Everyone knows it. The Jets have already come out and say, I think direct quote, Breece Hall is Batman and Michael Carter is like Robin. He's not Michael
The
Carter.
Jets don't
Breece
have
Hall's
Batman or Robin on their team, to be fair.
Exactly.
Right. But Breece Hall's that dude. I mean, he's
Yes.
a legit stud talent coming out of college. I loved his film. The talent-wise comp I give to him is like a Javonte Williams level runner. I think he's a really, really good running back in the NFL. He's starting immediately. Javonte Williams had to be like the backup to Michael Carter, to Melvin Gordon last season in Denver, and he still put up a really solid rookie year. Listen, I get it. It's the Jets. It's gross. But situation really doesn't matter that much for fantasy football in terms of the team that you're on. Everyone said the same thing about DeAndre Swift and the Lions when he's coming out as a rookie. Now he's a consensus top 10 running back. It's just the way the situation is, right? He's going to get the opportunity. I believe in the talent, and that's the biggest thing for me. I think that he has a big chance to break out this year and be a consensus first-round pick next year for fantasy, kind of how we saw. I don't want to compare him to Najee because Najee was a better prospect in a better situation, but Najee was a second-round pick last year, early second-round pick, very, very late first, maybe towards like the actual season, and now this year is a consensus first-rounder. I think it's going to be a similar situation to Breece Hall this year, where he's going in like the third or fourth, and next year he'll be mid to early second, maybe back in first-rounder.
Okay, Frank, same question to you. Favorite breakout running back?
All right. Well, first I got to touch on AJ Dillon that you mentioned, because he's actually probably my favorite. It's just because, the Packers have really severely limited wide receiver room. Obviously Lazard's really improving. Romeo Doubs has emerged, but he's a fourth round rookie. So the fact is, like, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are two of their best offensive players. So they're going to try as much as they can to, incorporate Dillon with a prominent role. And like you said, he can catch passes. They're still going to score a lot of points. There'll be touchdown opportunities, and he'll probably be the primary back in the red zone just because he's a beast. And when they're leading in games, playing those where they're heavily favored, double-digit spreads, they're just chewing the clock. They could keep Aaron Jones fresh. You don't need to use him in those situations. That's Dillon's
closer.
time. Yeah, he's the closer. So
I'd actually argue the opposite, that they're going to run Aaron Jones into the ground if they want out of his contract.
The thing is, though, if they want to I feel like if they overuse Aaron Jones, he could start getting banged up like we saw last season. And I think it's in their best interest to keep him, fresh and manage him a little bit, just to have him ready for the playoffs, because he is their best offensive weapon. And the way I look at it, I like Aaron Jones in fantasy, but where he goes early second round, I use AJ Dillon as a tiebreaker. Like
where do you have him in your rankings, Frank? Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, like 10 to 12 range around there.
Well, then that's exactly where he's going. Why are you?
No. Listen, I'm fine where he's going, but this is how I justify it. So I love Saquon Barkley this year. Yeah. I love his upside. He's going to be the focal point of the Giants. They go kind of neck and neck. So I'm thinking, if I want to get exposure to the Packers backfield, I'll just take Dillon in the 6th round. I'll take Barkley here. I use AJ Dillon basically as a tiebreaker.
Do you feel comfortable drafting AJ Dillon as your RB2?
Yes.
I don't. I like him as an RB. I love AJ Dillon as an RB3. Same with Kareem Hunt. I view those guys very similarly as guys who have great standalone value. And if their starter goes down, they're absolute studs. But I don't really like them as my RB2. I don't think Dillon's upside is top.
Wide receiver in round 1. You're not okay with him as your RB2 if you take one of the top 5 wide receivers?
No.
Really?
So, I don't like AJ Dillon. I never had to be in that situation, though, honestly.
It really depends on the way you build your roster. So the way I have on a team where I have AJ Dillon as my RB2, I really attack receivers in a league where you start 3 receivers in a flex. So I have in that league, I have Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, DJ Moore. So clearly the receivers are the strength of my team. And I have Fournette as my RB1. So in that instance, I've waited on RB2. It's a trade-off because my receivers are so strong. I understand your concerns with Dillon as RB2, but I feel like with Aaron Jones healthy, he'll still have standalone value. And then if Jones misses any time, AJ Dillon to the moon. But I understand what you're saying. And then in that instance where you're taking Dillon as your RB2, I'm taking a few more shots on that type of high upside type, like a Rashad White or someone like that.
Sure.
So it's just about the way you build your roster. If you built it in a way where you have AJ Dillon as your RB2, you took Josh Allen 3rd round, you took Kelsey 2nd round, then it's really risky, right?
Josh Allen's making it to the 3rd round.
Yeah, he could go as that high. Yeah,
that late.
That late.
Yeah,
it depends. He could go 2nd or 3rd. It depends on the format in the round. But anyway, to sum it up, it really depends on how you build it. But I know you had Dillon. I can add another player if you like. You want me to add it? All right. I always hype up Rashad Penny. I just love what he did at the end of last year. 670 rushing yards his last 5 games. He just showed he was just extremely efficient. I know the Seahawks, they don't have Russell Wilson, but they're going to be extremely run heavy. I think they'll be bad. They'll win 5. I think they'll win 5 games, 6 games. But I think Pete Carroll's the type of coach that he can have his players sort of overachieve and be that scrappy team that covers the spread here and there. They're just like a headache. And I don't think the situation will affect Penny too much. I know they drafted Kenneth Walker, but Rashad Penny decided to re-sign there after that absurd stretch. So I don't think he's willing to re-sign in Seattle if he's not, assured that he'll start off at least as the 1A. And now Kenneth Walker, his timetable is unclear off that hernia injury. So we're going to start seeing Penny as the lead back. I know he doesn't catch passes. That's a huge flaw in his profile, but you could get him in the 8th round. It's all about cost. So he's an efficient runner, and it's just that type of, I really like to build my roster where I attack receivers early with an RB1.
Yeah.
And then I'm waiting sort of on my RB2 and then RB depth. And in that kind of build, Penny makes sense.
Are you guys, who are you fading for running backs? Who do you think is going to really fall off? Yeah.
I have a strong one. It's Elijah Mitchell for me. And J.K. Dobbins, actually. J.K. Dobbins I'm fading for purely because of injury. I think he's in a great situation and he's a great talent, but his ACL tear with additional ligament damage is really, really bad. He's not going to be himself to start the year. Over the second half of the season, we'll see him return more to form. But his injury right now is a complete fade. He's off my board. I'm not drafting him. And then another guy who I wouldn't say it's completely off my board, but I have not taken a share of him yet because he hasn't fallen far enough for me as Elijah Mitchell. Listen, I really like Elijah Mitchell as a player. I think he's very talented. But from a team building standpoint, I mean, from an NFL real life standpoint, you have to hear me out for a second here. So Kyle Shanahan is notorious for messy committee backfields. Okay. He's had a different lead rusher in that team for 5 straight seasons. 5 straight seasons. Okay. It's always a different rusher. The running scheme there is fantastic. The lead runner is always very valuable for fantasy, and I totally understand that. But it's so hard to to predict who is going to be on a week-to-week basis, especially when injuries enter the picture. They also drafted Trey Sermon in the 3rd round last year. He sucked. He is bad at football. He's a bust. I don't care about Trey Sermon. Get him out of my face. But they got Elijah Mitchell last year, and he became a really good player, right? But the only reason he got that opportunity, remember, is because Raheem Mostert, who was their starting running back, got injured. That's important to remember. The team didn't want Elijah Mitchell to be the guy at first, okay? He played great. He is the guy right now. But the thing that's really important is they drafted another running back in the 3rd round. If they like Elijah Mitchell so much and they already have Trey Sermon and they still have Jeff Wilson, why the hell are they spending a 3rd round draft pick, which is pretty premium capital, on another running back? In my opinion, it's because they want to replace Trey Sermon's production with a guy who is actually good at football. They want to have a Thunder and Lightning kind of duo, and I think that Torian Davis-Price or TDP is going to be the Thunder. I think that he is – I don't really care that much about TDP for fantasy. I think he's a good late-round flyer pick with upside, but what I'm trying to say is I'm mostly fading Elijah Mitchell, not based off talent or situation, but purely based off the committee. I think that the committee is too murky. There's going to be times where you're not going to know who the guy to start there is. If injuries arise at all with Elijah Mitchell, I could see this team giving a lot of carries to TDP, and he takes over and they ride the hot hand. It's just the way the San Francisco backfield works. And I'm okay being proven wrong. If it's different and he becomes a stud this year, that's fine. But I think from my process, it's always process over outcome, right? Usually in fantasy football, it's about putting things through a filter. And eventually you'll get some stuff wrong, but sometimes you'll get some stuff right.
Yeah.
But Elijah Mitchell at his cost is a fade for me because I feel like he's really risky.
That's the definition of value, what you just said.
Someone just said to make a bet. Pace actually said he'll make a bet with me in chat that Dobbins is RB20 or better this season, weeks 1 through 17, injuries included, any amount or price.
Wow.
That is dude. That's crazy.
Wow.
With the injury?
Including injury.
Love this.
Jeez.
All right. I mean, I'll bet you. I'll take a $50 bet on that.
There you go.
50
All
big
right.
ones. Pace
$50. Write it down.
Right. Careful. Pacer breaks thumbs.
Speaking of Pacer, you touched on something important there when you said it's really, really tough to predict who's going to emerge out of that backfield, or it's really tough to predict anything in the future for that matter.
Right.
So
it is.
Isn't
it crazy? Sometimes I tweet about this. Like Frank is a full-time fantasy analyst. Like I hope to be a full-time fantasy analyst. Our job is to predict the future. It's fucking crazy. Isn't that wild? Just think about it sometimes. Our job is to predict the future. It's insane. I love it.
You want to know an easier job?
What?
Just watch the game and bet based off what you see.
Yeah, it is. It's just so funny to think about that sometimes, like our job is literally to use historical data and trends and predict the future. It's so crazy.
Yeah, there's a great and this is one of the inplayLIVE philosophies. How hard is it to predict the weather 1 month from now, right? Like if I was to say, well, what's the weather going to be like on September 14th? How do you know? You look out your window and you go, well, what's the weather going to be like in 15 minutes? Well, I think I've got a pretty good idea for that. And that's the difference between betting live player props while the games are happening. You can use your eyes, you can see what's happening versus, trying to predict something in November. So we got
something that's so exhausting about fantasy analysis too. Is like, I mean, like we're doing these shows and daily podcasts and stuff back in like May and June and like, but like, it's so funny because like we're going so in depth, like this is what's going to happen in the fall, but like in May, but everything changes so much month to month and week to week. It's like it gets exhausting to a certain extent. Like I just want to watch them go play football now. Like we talked about it for months, debated in circles with the same players for months. I've had this Elijah Mitchell take I just shared for like the last like 5 months, guys. I just keep saying it over and over. It's a fun time. Well, Jason and I have officially agreed to $50 bet, by the way.
Luke, real quick for you, Frank, real quick for you. Who are you fading this year? Really, really quick.
All right, we're going to go with David Montgomery, new coaching staff in Chicago. There's, just like Luke mentioned, in Vegas, where there's whispers of a committee, there is in Chicago as well. They want to scale back Monty's role a bit. And, Khalil Herbert is really talented. Last year when he got some action with Monty out, he looked good. Add in the fact, the Bears offense projects to be one of the worst in the league. Their offensive line isn't good. I know Justin Fields is a great runner, and that could open up running lanes that helps like running backs. It'll help them on the ground, but it hurts them in terms of receiving upside, because running quarterbacks don't target their running backs at a high rate. So you add in the committee risk, you add in lack of receiving upside. You also add in the fact that he goes like 4th round. I'm going to take Allen Robinson there, a receiver, every time.
Yeah.
Or even he could go up in some formats to the 3rd round. I'm going to take DJ Moore there every time. And I'll, live with the fact that my RB2 is going to come later in the draft, like say with an AJ Dillon.
Right.
Or, think about it. Would you rather have AJ Dillon in the 6th or Monty in the 3rd, when you could take like a DJ Moore
it's
there?
It's close.
It's not close.
So
sure.
It's just
He's a classic dead zone running back. 100%.
Yeah. Exactly.
Classic.
I'm going to go real bold on my fade prediction.
Okay.
And I'm fading King Henry this year.
Yeah.
That's not too hot. Everyone fades him because he's old.
What I got to do?
I'm with you on that one too.
Yeah.
I
just think big running backs, like Eddie George, Sean Alexander, guys like that, they're really, really good until they hit the cliff and then it's over. Like power backs they don't fade away. Like it's a cliff for them. And I think like the workload that Henry, even with the injury last year, with the workload with him, it's got to catch up at some point. When he slows down, it's going to be the
argument I have for Henry is that when he was healthy last season, he was so good for fantasy. He was averaging 24 points per game, which was
incredible.
3 more per game than Jonathan Taylor. 3 points per game more than Jonathan Taylor. That's a substantial amount of points, guys. Substantial.
Yeah.
That's a difference between like an RB12 and an RB2, and that's RB1 versus RB2. You know what I mean? But the thing is, I think you could argue that his injury helped preserve his legs a little bit and keep him fresher, because he only played half the season. He's had more time in the offseason to recover. And I totally agree with you that the clip is coming 100%.
Yeah.
But I think to a certain extent, there's some guys out there that are outliers in terms of their physical dominance and a longer career than you would expect. I mean, I don't want to say look at Adrian Peterson, but look at Adrian Peterson. I mean, his career went on freaking forever, and he's still, even before he retired, he wasn't that bad.
Well, yeah, but it's because he's got 27 kids to pay for. He's got to keep going.
Well, of course. I know. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, I mean, the guy looks fresh, Joe. I get it. It's off-season workout videos, seasons. But I mean, I've seen videos of the guy running up a freaking hill and making cuts like a demon. I mean, I just still think he's going to be really good this year. He's the heart of the Titans offense. Even if he is a little bit washed, as long as he doesn't get hurt, I think he's pretty safe.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, guys, on to receiver. Who is your favorite breakout candidate for wide receiver, and why isn't it Gabe Davis?
I could start this one.
Go ahead, man.
For breakout, I'm going to probably go with Brandon Ayuk, just because I know his rookie year was really good. He put up 15 PPR points per game, which was like 10th most for a rookie since like 2010 or something. It was a great rookie year. And then last year was a huge disappointment. He started off the year in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. He was barely used the first couple of weeks, and Debo took over. But now with Trey Lance playing, he's more willing to throw it downfield, whereas Jimmy G was just a check down machine, which fits more with Debo, whereas now Lance, probably his skill set fits very well with Ayuk. And, word out of camp is they've got instant chemistry. He's really tearing it up there. And you could get Ayuk in, say, like the 6th, 7th round. It's still a reasonable price. He's moving up draft boards, but like that's pretty solid. I know there's a risk that in San Fran, they run heavy, and they have a lot of mouths to feed with Debo and Kittle there. But I think that's baked into the price, given that he's going in like the 7th round.
Well, and I think he's repaired the rift with Shanahan, right? Like there was talk last year that Ayuk and Shanahan weren't exactly on the same page, and it sounds like they are now. It sounds like they've remedied that. So,
100%. Sounds like he's ready. Like I think I read an interview. You just saw you hear him taking more of like a leadership role with the team. You think he's ready to all systems go. And that's a solid pick for sure.
Yeah. Luke, quick one for you. Favorite breakout
wide receiver from me is going to be Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos wide out. I have him over Jerry Jeudy big time. I have him as my wide receiver 14 in my rankings. I think that his ceiling is really high in this AFC West division, which is going to be the highest scoring division in football, and it's not going to be close. You have four powerhouse offenses there with the Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, and Chargers. I think that he is the clear wide receiver one there. I think that Russell Wilson increases his ceiling dramatically. We've seen him had a pretty good wide receiver finish in the past with Joe Flacco and Drew Lock before. This is his second year removed from the ACL injury that he was playing with last year that held back his production. So this season, we're going to get a healthy Courtland Sutton. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns, I think. And I think he's going to be the main weapon in this passing attack for the Broncos, which should be a pretty valuable role to have in the AFC West offense.
That's awesome. Razor, do you have one?
Breakout wide receiver?
Yeah.
I didn't come prepared with one, which is kind of my new MO since joining inplayLIVE. Whoever the fuck's getting open week 1. That's who.
I'm going to go Gabe Davis, and obviously, but I'm going to tell you guys why. So obviously, I'm a pretty big Bills fan. I'm a big. I love Gabe Davis. I'm super biased, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. Just because I'm biased doesn't mean I'm wrong. So here's why, and I said it in the funny promo video, but I'm a big fan of upside for guys with lots of talent who have other weapons on their offense that'll yank away coverage, right? And the year I learned this was when Randy Moss got drafted. He got drafted onto a team that already had 2 stud wide receivers in Chris Carter and Jake Reed.
Please don't tell me you're comparing him to Randy Moss.
I'm not. I'm just giving you a coverage breakdown.
Thank God.
Yeah. You relax. So what it meant in that rookie season was Moss was never, ever they started doubling him later, but for the first 8 or 9 games, they couldn't because they had Jake Reed and Chris Carter. And so Randy Moss going up against the other team's second cornerback, sometimes third cornerback in single coverage, it just wasn't fair. And so that analogy is part of why I absolutely love Gabe Davis. He's never going to be double covered ever, ever, because you gotta fade to Diggs. He has tremendous chemistry with Josh Allen. He's on what should be the number 1 offense in football, and he's never going to face better than single coverage with a CB2. And people think that he wasn't that good last year. Well, he started hurt, and then they went with Emmanuel Sanders. And then when he got the job back from Emmanuel Sanders, he put up wide receiver 1 numbers for the last 4 games of the regular season and playoff.
It's a very small sample.
You've given 4 small samples today. Rashad Penny. No,
that was
said
me. That was Penny. That's me.
Small sample.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
But you also have Breece Hall on here, a small sample. Come on.
It's different. He's a rookie.
So he's
a rookie running back.
Davis, this is his 3rd year. We all know that anybody who's been playing fantasy football for any length of time knows that wide receivers, their typical breakout year is year 3, right? That's when they figure it out. I think he's primed for it. I think he is going to have an absolute monster. So guys, we have 10 minutes left because we like to make calls on certain bets. I asked you each to come prepared today with your favorite week 1 player prop for this year. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one because normally if we were going to do something like this, we'd have all the lines out. We'd see what's there. We'd see what all the numbers are. So we're going to have to kind of guess what the lines are. But each of you give me your 1 pick for week 1 that you think will outperform whatever the line is when they go. Luke, let's start with you.
Yeah, man, I don't really have one. Obviously, the lines aren't available. But I'm a Steelers fan, and this is the opposite of biased. I think Jamar Chase is going to fucking cook us in week 1. He's going to cook the secondary, man. The Steelers are notorious for giving up really big plays down the field, a lot of coverage busts, and I think that the Steelers are going to get absolutely gashed by Jamar Chase in week 1. So take the over on whatever it is, receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns. Just hammer it. Jamar Chase is going to crush week 1.
Steelers fan living in Ohio.
Yeah, jeez. My dad said the family's from Pittsburgh.
Jeez, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Frank, same question to you. Who you got?
All right. So I'm going to look at Juju Smith-Schuster reception props because
I love that.
here we have a situation in Kansas City where it's not clearly cut who the number one wide receiver is. We know Kelsey's the top target, but I don't think the betting market will really set Juju at a high line where like they'll assume like some kind of volatility there, given that, you know, we had a couple down years. So you're getting a low bar there, and they're going to be playing Arizona, 54-point total. Kansas City has one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Arizona lost Chandler Jones. They did nothing to replace him. So their pass rush could really struggle. Yeah. You're going to have Mahomes with a clean pocket. He could just pick apart that defense. So I would say like with Smith-Schuster, you might see his receptions prop as like 5.5, maybe if we're lucky 4.5. And, you know, with the way he excels in the intermediate, shorter to intermediate passing game, he can just fly over that number. So you like the fact that it's likely to be a lower bar, given that it's sort of uncertain there. And it just, I think it's a great choice. I'm hoping it's 4.5, but I think it'll be probably 5.5. I can't see 6.5 though, because that's
it won't be 6.5.
No, it won't be 6.5.
No. Yeah. Razor, who's your week one player prop, buddy?
That's who I was going to say was Juju as well. And he'd actually be my breakout too, just based on the situation that he's in. I think it's kind of an obvious pick for a breakout, but somebody is going to have to be Tyreek in that offense, or at least take on that extra production. And he's the clear fit. Like last year, Ben was just so bad. And Juju's got a long enough history that they may be basing, like you say, his totals off what he's done most recently. So I think he could definitely be that breakout wide receiver, not only in week one, but for the season.
Yeah. I love it. And my week one player prop is obviously going to be Buffalo Bill, but I'm going to be right. And it's Isaiah McKenzie. McKenzie is taking all the Beasley routes. Luke, I know it's a small sample, but there were a couple times where he filled in for Beasley last year, most notably the second regular season game against New England. And I think he had 11 catches for 125 yards or something. He was unguardable. You couldn't stop him. He's a little water bug. They're going to use him in a whole bunch of different ways. He's going to have some rushing yards. So if they offer a total yards bet for McKenzie, that's probably the one I'll take. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to guess that his pregame line is going to be 34.5 yards. And I will be hammering the over, and I'll also be taking stretch bets on that because I think he could hit 70.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because again, you're picking a guy that's not, the market won't really price highly yet. You're using what you know about what he's shown in a limited sample to try to get ahead of the market there.
Yeah.
Before they raise up the lines. I like that one too.
Yeah. Somebody just commented, no faith in Ramsey. Well, Ramsey obviously will be covering Stephon Diggs, which is also part of why I love this, right? Like when you have as many weapons as the Bills do, you know, you can kind of play that pick your poison sort of game, right? And just go, okay, well, you know, you want to fade or you want to do everything you can to deal with Diggs. Well, we're going to get you with McKenzie or you know, or Motor or whoever. Like they're going to be taking whatever they give them and they can do that all day. So guys, this was such a fun call. I hope we can do this again. This was great. I love the banter. I'm going to follow up with each of you on maybe some future projects that we can do together. But guys, just thanks so much for doing this. We're going to, I just want to talk really briefly about kind of where this show is going and what we're doing. So we're going to have a lot of fun this year, you guys. We're going to be trying some different things. Ray and I were really, really humbled and touched by some of the comments that came our way last week in Vancouver. We were at the inplayLIVE conference where, you know, we got to see everybody in person. The first year we did the conference, there was like 25 or 27 people or something. This year there was well over 100. It was super humbling. You know, of course, everybody kind of knows our faces and knows us. We don't know you. We just see your names on here. But, you know, there were 3 people in particular that came up to Ray and I with tears in their eyes, talking about the impact that this show has made on their lives. We had no idea. It's awesome, guys. Like, this is awesome. And, you know, we're just kind of the catalyst, or the conduit, I should say, for, you know, the people that are learning about inplayLIVE and the people that are in there running the show. inplayLIVE is changing lives. I mean, Pacers change more lives than Oprah Winfrey, pound for pound, not like even, but pound for pound. Pacers change more lives than Oprah Winfrey. Take that to the bank. But he's killing it, guys. Like, this group is absolutely changing lives. I don't know how many people in the group have made 6 figures profit with this, but it's a lot. I bet it's pushing 100 to be a part of it. Oh, for sure it is. And this year it'll quadruple. Like, guys are really starting to hit it out of the park. So, Ray, why don't you just make sure everybody knows where they can follow us, where they can listen to this, just reiterate all that stuff.
Yeah. So, the Ray and Adam show is on Twitter, Instagram. Through those, mediums, you'll be able to click on a link, find our code. It's Ray Adam. If you want to join inplayLIVE, use that. It'll save you money, every year on your subscription, and actually every quarter. I think on quarter,
$50 a quarter, it saves you. Yeah.
And I can't wait for next week. And next time we have you guys on, well, obviously we're not gonna be able to talk about preseason. So I want to talk to you guys about your week to week process and what your DFS looks like. And, you know, we take it to that next level where we're betting in game based on what we see, which is just that, you know, that next level of give it to me right now, you know? Yep. So I think that's where the opportunities are. I think I'll be playing fantasy football for the rest of my life. It's so much fun, but we want to teach you guys a little bit about the opportunities week to week, and you can be really, really valuable in showing us what we're supposed to be looking for that week, because that really helps.
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds great.
We were talking about it pregame. So last year, I think we started in like week 14 or 15. Ray and I and a few of the other guys from inplayLIVE, we started to have these meetings where we would break down a specific game, and everybody had to come to the meeting. It'd be 4 or 5 guys, and we would assign different perspectives to each person heading into the meeting. So this guy would have to come in based on offensive weakness. One guy would come in based on personnel changes and injuries. This guy would come in with talking about when the expected scores are going to happen. Is this a better first half defense than second half, vice versa? Same on offense. And we would start breaking these things down altogether. It takes an hour to do it. And then in every case, we would come away with 1 or 2 really, really strong value props. And we killed it. Like, we absolutely killed it. So one of the things we're going to do this year, guys, is we're going to do one of those meetings live on air, so you guys can watch how we broke it all down, how we did it. And hopefully we can teach you, so we can start tailing you, you know, like you're tailing us, because it's a lot of work to break down each game. So if we can divide that up with other guys that are sharp and knowledgeable, that's going to be a lot of fun. So guys, thanks so much for this. We don't know what the guest is going to be next week on the show, but I know they're going to be great. Luke, Frank, thanks again. Follow these guys on social media, listen to what they're saying. They're mostly right.
We try to be. But yeah, quick plug. Yeah, on Twitter, it's at Luke Sawhook. Luke and the 2 middle things, Sawhook, all lowercase. But tonight, guys, if there's 46 people in here, I do my show live on Twitter every night at 7 p.m. Eastern, called the Fantasy Football Radio Hour. It's a Twitter Spaces show. It's audio only, but anyone can come up and talk, which is really fun. You can like request to speak on your screen, and you can come up and we can talk. It's really fun. We've had like 30 to 40 people in there live every night this past week. So I'd love to see you guys in there. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's awesome. Tune in, guys. That's great. Frank, your Twitter handle?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at FAMMIRANTETFJ. You know, always interacting with followers. Love talking football. Luke, I got to come check out your show one of these days. I'd be sure to check it out.
On there before.
I went to listen a little bit, but like more of an active thing. You know, like where I could come and speak. Yeah, I'd love to. You're doing great work there.
Thanks, man.
Be sure to check out Luke's show. He's really grinding hard and doing a great job. And then, yeah, and on thegameday.com, you could find my fantasy or betting content there, football as well as other sports. But it's been a pleasure, guys, and I look forward to coming back again in the future during the season. Let's be profitable here.
You
Absolutely.
bet. Yeah, profitable.
Also, just real quick, Pace in the chat asked if we help with rosters, trades, and etc. Yeah, my DMs are open to questions 24/7.
Same.
Answer everything for free. So yeah, if you guys ever have any questions, just shoot me a DM on Twitter, and same to Frank.
Yep.
There you go. Right on. Make your bed, Luke. Thanks, boys.
It is made. You see it? Relatively.
I love it. Thanks, boys. Enjoy
All
the rest
right.
of the
Thanks,
week.
guys.
See
All
you
right.
guys.
Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
Take
You too.
care.
Bye.
Bye.